Welcome to the Inner Growth Podcast. I hope you're doing amazing. I'm your host, Carolina, and I am super excited to be chatting with you today. It's just us. We're doing a little solo episode. And on today's conversation, we're going to be talking about comparison because this is something that I feel like comes up a lot, especially in your 20s, but honestly, throughout our whole lives. And I think that it's time for us to normalize the experience of comparison, but also understand why do we compare and how can we use comparison to fuel us in the direction of our best selves, but also how can we just move on from the toxicity of comparison and just alchemize the experience itself into something better, into something for your growth. So I'm going to keep the intro short and sweet. Let's jump right into it. I'll see you on the other side and let's get growing. Okay, so let's talk about comparison. I feel like comparing is something that I've definitely struggled with in my own personal journey. And let me say, it's just not very fun, right? When we're comparing ourselves to other people, it doesn't serve us at all in any way, really. And there's two main types of comparisons that we do, right? There's upward comparisons and downward comparisons. Upward comparisons, I feel like, is what I tend to struggle with the most, which is when you're looking at someone else in your life, whether it's someone you follow or a friend or a family member or just someone around you, and you are looking at what they're doing, what they've achieved, what they're up to, whatever. And then you compare yourself to them and you say, oh my gosh, there's all these things that they're achieving that I haven't done. They're doing all these things and they're so far ahead than me and they're so much more successful than me. And then you feel poorly about yourself. You feel like you're not doing enough. You feel like you are behind. You feel like you're failing. And it can trigger this low self-esteem or this low self-image. Now, the other type of comparison that we can sometimes do as well is downward social comparison, which is when we're looking at someone who we maybe feel like we are doing better off than to feel better about ourselves, right? So we can then say, oh, well, but look at that person. They're struggling with that thing and I'm not, and therefore I'm doing better than them. And then you use that as a way to kind of feel better about yourself. I feel like that type of comparison also doesn't really take you anywhere because you're kind of going down the route of putting someone else down, whether literally to them, making someone else feel bad about themselves so that you can feel good about yourself, or you're doing it in your head to feel better. Now, those are the two main types of comparisons, right? And I feel like when it comes to those downward social comparisons, when you're looking at someone else and how much better off than them you are to feel better about yourself, or you're verbally being mean to someone to make them feel bad about themselves so that you can feel better about yourself, like that type of comparison, it doesn't really take you anywhere. It doesn't really serve you very much because you are just trying to protect yourself from feeling like you're not enough. And that kind of results in you making someone else feel bad. So I personally really stay away from these types of comparisons, and I've never really struggled too much with that. My worst experiences with comparison are usually from upward social comparisons. Now, when it comes to upward social comparison, I think there's two ways that this happens, right? Sometimes with upward social comparison, we are looking at someone who's maybe a celebrity, maybe, someone who is a lot older than us, and they can be like huge inspirations, right? I find that this kind of comparison for me isn't so toxic necessarily because most of the times these people are so much older or they just seem to be in such a different life stage than me that it doesn't really seem like I could even be there right now. And it gives me peace to know that. And it gives me kind of like a sense of sureness that I can get there, right? If I stay consistent, if I keep putting in the work. Like I'll think of people like Manifestation Babe or Jay Shetty, or even creators like Sammy Clark, who have been in the game of social media for so many years at this point, where they're in a certain place of success that feels very inspiring to me. And when I look at their success, I don't necessarily feel bad about myself because I know that, okay, I've been doing this for 3 years. They've been doing this for 10 or more years. Like if I keep going and I get to 10, I probably will be able to reach that level of success if I stay consistent and I put in the work. And so those types of comparisons actually are really motivating for me and are very inspiring. And I find that the hardest type of comparison is an upward social comparison, but that you do with people around you, with your friends, with your family, with people who are similar to you. And I think most of the times that we are comparing, that is the type of comparing that we're doing, right? And that can be really hard to deal with mentally because what happens? Let's say you're comparing yourself to your best friend and your best friend just got a promotion or something like that. You want to feel happy for your friend, right? Like, you know that at your core, the best version of yourself would be ecstatic for that friend of yours. But maybe there's this part of you, this little part of you deep inside that can't help but feel like you're not doing enough, or you're behind, or you are just not at the same level of success as your friend, and then you just feel bad. But then you feel an extra layer of upsetness, you feel an extra layer of shame because not only are you feeling like you're not enough and like you're behind, but you're also feeling bad because you're comparing yourself to your friend who you want to be happy for, right? And so that is the hardest type of comparison. And I feel like that is a type of comparison that most people fall down the trap of. I also think a lot of people compare their life to what they see on social media, and they forget that they're only seeing a glimpse of someone else's life on social media. So that can also be very tricky. And so I want to just kind of like ramble and talk about those types of comparisons and how you can move through it, right? So when it comes to the type of comparison, when you're comparing with a friend, someone who's close to you, someone who's very similar to you, and it's causing you to feel like you're behind, like you are not at the level you want to be at, or like you're not successful enough, you're not good enough, etc. The first thing that I think is important to realize is that we are all on different timelines. We really, really are. One thing my therapist told me a long time ago that really helped me move through this type of comparison is, she said, let's say you're comparing yourself to a friend. I'm going to call her Anna, just as an example, right? Let's say I'm comparing myself to my friend Anna. My therapist would turn to me and she would ask me, okay, well, would you want to switch your entire life for Anna's entire life? Like, would you want to have Anna's relationship reality? Like, would you want to swap your boyfriend for her boyfriend? Would you want to swap your job for her job, your house for her house, your upbringing, your parents, your physical body, your entire life for her life? And every single time she would ask me this question, my answer was always no, right? Because when you think about it in that way, most times when we are comparing, we're comparing in isolation. We're just comparing one little aspect of our lives with one little aspect of that other person's life. But then when you take into account your whole human experience, your whole life, everything that you are doing, everything that you are living through, and kind of put it into perspective with what that other person is experiencing, then you're able to realize, damn, like, no, actually, I really like my life, and I don't necessarily want everything else that that other person has, even if this one aspect of her life seems better than mine. So that's the first thing that really helps me with those types of comparisons, is just realizing that you can't really do comparison in isolation, right? And everyone's in a different timeline, and that's just part of life. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Now, the second thing also is that we are all on different timelines. And as much as we hear that, sometimes it's really hard to understand that. And things can move really fast. Life can change a lot in a year. And when you see someone else going through a change, that doesn't really mean that that's not possible for you, or that you're not going to have that experience. You might just have it in a different moment of your life. And maybe you're in a season of life right now where other things are flowing for you, and that's okay, right? I remember, for example, when I was moving earlier this year, I was moving apartments from Manhattan into Brooklyn, and I just remember, like, I was really stressed out with the move. There was a lot of coordinating that I had to do. There was a lot of planning going into it. And I was comparing my like work life in that moment, like how my social media performance was going with someone else. But then I was failing to take account for the fact that I just moved all of my things into a new space. I'm acclimating to a new neighborhood. There's all these other things shifting in my life. And it's unfair to myself to put the pressure on myself to be exceeding and excelling in every single area of my life. Like, there are seasons for life, and there are times in your life where one thing is going to be flowing a lot. Maybe that's work, and maybe relationships are kind of taking a back burner, right? Or friendships. Or maybe it's vice versa. Like, maybe you're really caring about your social life right now. Or maybe vice versa. Maybe your social life is really important to you right now, and experiences and traveling and adventure is really important to you. And being sitting at a desk and grinding away at work isn't. And so don't compare what is going on in your life with someone else's, because we're all in different seasons. And that's really beautiful. And that's something we have to just learn to accept and learn to flow with, because that can give us a lot of peace. And something that really has helped me with this too is astrology, interestingly enough, because basically the whole premise of astrology, right, is that we have individual birth charts. When we were born, the planets were in different signs. For us, we have different rising signs, we have different moon signs. Like, we're unique beings and we have unique birth charts. For example, I am an Aries rising, right? And I have a Cancer moon, a Taurus sun, etc. My Cancer moon is in my fourth house. So Cancer rules my fourth house because I have an Aries rising. While for my mom, who is a Cancer but is a Libra rising, Cancer rules her 10th house. And for Pedro, who is a Capricorn rising, it rules his 7th house. And so whenever we're in Cancer season, the sun is going to be illuminating a different part of my chart than my mom's, than Pedro's. And therefore, what might be flowing in my life right now might be different than that other person, right? Or maybe it's going to be activating, maybe this transit right now is going to be activating something different for me than for someone else, a different lesson, a different experience, a different focus. And that really gives me a lot of peace too, because it just anchors me back in on the fact that we're all on different timelines. And even astrologically, I can like rationalize it. I can just be like, yeah, our birth charts are receiving different like light bulbs of attention right now. And that's just how it is. I'll give a recent example. So during Gemini season, when the sun is in Gemini, that's between the middle of May and the middle of June. And I have a Gemini Venus in the 3rd house of communication and expression and social networks and all these things and ideas and just writing and expressing and communicating. So a lot of the times during Gemini season, my content will perform really well and it will be getting a lot of comments and attention, and I feel like I'm reaching a lot of people. And I do think that in some ways, the sun being in Gemini and like that part of my chart being illuminated with Venus there, which is like abundance and blessings and flow and beauty, like my Venus also being activated during Gemini season, like that is just a beautiful thing. But it's also transitory, right? Eventually, in like a month, the sun moves into Cancer, and then it illuminates the most private part of my chart, my 4th house of home, of grounding, of like my roots, of nourishing energy, and just kind of like self-care. And sometimes my content doesn't perform the best during Cancer season, and then I start getting in my head and I'm comparing to how I was doing during Gemini season. And then I stop and I realize, like, wait, there's been all these beautiful things going on in my home life, and that is something I can lean into and I can find beauty in. Like, Adrian and I, for example, in the last couple of weeks, where we've been in Cancer season when I'm recording this, we've been really decorating our apartment. We moved around the furniture. We set up the podcast studio. We went to the flea market and found a really cool art piece. And we found a fun little like storage unit in the middle of the street, and we stooped it and we got it for free. And our apartment is coming together, and there's all this energy and this beauty flowing into our home. And we're having really fun, but also really chill nights where we're staying in, we're watching a show, and I'm making tea every night. And that's the energy. Like, that's the focus. And I just have to find peace in that. I just have to find beauty in that. I just have to be okay with the fact that things are a little bit different right now. The energy is a little bit different. The focus is a little bit different. That I feel a little bit more moody. I feel a little bit more sensitive. And maybe for someone else who has Cancer in their 10th house of career, maybe they're flowing and having these big launches and having this progressions and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like everything is happening in different timelines for all of us. And it's not worth the mental space to be constantly comparing in terms of timing for our lives. And I also think that when we're comparing to our friends, right, it's important to move past this toxic comparison, because you want to be in an abundance mindset, right? You want to be able to look at your friends' successes and see them as your successes. And I've done an episode on the law of oneness, but basically what the law of oneness, which is similar to the law of attraction, states is that we are all one, right? We're all energy, and we're all souls living a human experience. We're all in physical human bodies, and we're all the same at our core, right? We're all energy expressed in human form. And so someone else's success can also be your success, because a success for everyone. The more that I really try to truly be happy for other people, sometimes the more I unconsciously manifest that thing for myself, especially when I'm coming from a really pure, genuine sense of happiness for that person. And like something recently that happened to me was I was talking to a friend and we were talking about brand deals, and she was mentioning how someone she knew recently had worked with Nike. And I know this person too, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like go her. Like that's awesome that she got to work with Nike. Like how cool." And I didn't think twice about it. I was just like, damn, like I would love to work with Nike one day. I'm not even kidding you. Less than a week later, I got a brand deal with Nike. And I didn't reach out to Nike. Like I didn't do anything. Like my manager just came through with this deal. And I was like, what? That is so cool. And then I remembered that I had this encounter with this other friend where she mentioned this situation where someone we knew was working with Nike. And I was like, whoa, I was genuinely happy for that person. And look how it reflected back into my life. And when it comes to an abundance mindset too, right? It's not only, oh, I'm looking at someone else's success and I'm feeling proud of them and I'm feeling happy for them because a win for them is a win for us. It's also realizing that if it's possible for them, it's also possible for you. Like literally, there is nothing that is off limits for you. And if you're finding yourself comparing constantly to your friends, really genuinely try to understand why, right? If you're comparing yourself to a friend when it comes to career, why are you comparing? Maybe it's indicating to you that you kind of want what that person is doing too. So you can then take an empowered stance and say, let me go look for a job where I can work in that as well, because clearly that seems cool to me. Or maybe, the reason you're comparing is because that person just got a pay raise, because of their promotion. And you're looking for new ways to save more money or grow your money. So then realize, okay, I don't necessarily have to go about this the same way that that person did, but clearly I'm wanting to grow my money. So what can I do to do that? Like, what can I change in my investments or my savings or something like that so that I can grow my money? So try to debrief, try to break it down as to why you're comparing. And then maybe you'll get some clues into little shifts you can make or different things you can try, and get really clear with yourself about why you're comparing or why that person's success triggered you to compare with them. And something else that I recently saw someone post about that I think really applies here is gratitude. What this person was saying in her post is that gratitude is the language that we speak with the universe. It's the frequency that we can tap into so that we can manifest things in our lives. And I think that's really important and something I am constantly trying to go back to, because I find that whenever I'm comparing, whenever I'm falling down these loops, I am taking a lot in my life for granted, and I'm doing that isolated comparison, right? And I'm forgetting about everything that is going well in my life. And so whenever I do take stock for everything that I appreciate around me and all the different things I'm grateful for, and I just take 5 minutes, 2 minutes to write a gratitude list and to genuinely feel grateful. Like you have to tap into the emotion. Like it's not just writing a list of gratitudes, it's just actually feeling grateful and looking around your life and being like, whoa, look at all the abundance around me. Look at all the friends I have. Look at all the things I own. Look at all the experiences I have had. Look at all the memories I've made. And you're able to genuinely take stock of that. You will kind of like alchemize that comparison and you'll break it. Like you will stop it in its tracks, because even if that person that you're comparing to seems to be achieving something that you want, that doesn't mean that there's not things in your life that are really great. That's super important as well. And I think it's something that we all need to tap into more, and that I'm constantly working on and I'm constantly thinking about. And it's something that I really try to do when I fall down these loops of comparison. And I feel like I've kind of touched on a lot of the things that I wanted to say, right? Ultimately, when we're comparing, we are falling down a victim mindset many times and falling down a lack mindset, because we're either looking at what someone else is achieving and we're feeling like they have all these things and we don't, and we're feeling lack and we're feeling like we're focusing on all the things that we don't have, or we are comparing and then we're feeling like victims of our own life and we're feeling powerless and we're feeling stuck. Oh, look at them, they're achieving all these things and I'm not doing jack shit and I'm here stuck, and I'm like, rolling in the mud, like I'm not getting anything done, I'm not reaching my goals. And that can feel really demotivating, especially, right, if you're going down this loop of feeling like a victim and blaming external circumstances, or just feeling like it's an external force's fault that you are not able to achieve X, Y, and Z. instead of falling down that loop, when you catch yourself comparing and you catch yourself feeling like a victim, realize that you actually have power to change your life. Like, you actually have power to make different choices and get the things you want. And sometimes you might be slacking in life. Like, you might be, not showing up as your best self. You might be putting things in the back burner or just coasting and getting really comfortable and playing small. I've done this too. And it's really important to break out of that and just take responsibility for your life and say, no, I'm in charge of my life. I'm capable of reaching my dreams. I'm capable of doing this shit. I just got to put in the work. I got to decide what it is I want. And maybe in comparing, I am realizing what it is that I actually want. And then I got to take action. I got to take steps towards it. And the worst thing is knowing that you want something and then not doing anything about it, right? Because you're getting in your own way. And recently, I had this realization with myself. Like, I had a little pep talk with myself because I felt like I was going down this loop where I was comparing my content on TikTok a lot with other people's. And I've been on TikTok since the very beginning of TikTok. So a lot has changed, a lot has evolved in the platform. And I was just feeling like a victim of the platform. I was like, the algorithm doesn't like me. My content isn't performing well. What's going on? I don't know what's going on. It's not working. But I wasn't posting every day. I wasn't actually trying different things. I wasn't sticking with one content format. I wasn't leaning into any content pillars. I wasn't putting in the fucking work. And I, in my astrology, have literally Saturn, which is the planet that represents hard work, discipline, motivation, consistency, conjunct my sun in Taurus. Like, that is so important to me. That's something I have to really continuously master in my own life, in my own journey, is doing the work, showing up. So I literally looked at myself in the mirror in the bathroom and I was like, Carolina, you've always been the type of person who makes the fucking study guide, who puts in the work, who I would sit in the classroom, I would ask questions, I would be in the library, I would make a study guide, I would study, and then I would get an A. But I put in the work, right? And I told myself this. I was like, Carolina, like, put in the work, right? Instead of looking at everyone's content on TikTok and comparing and feeling bad about your own, look at their content and be smart. Analyze, why did I like this video? Why was this hook good? Why was this video a video I wanted to keep watching? Why did it stop me in my scroll? And getting really smart about it and observing and learning from that experience and just being like, ooh, okay, they did this. That was cool. That was interesting. Maybe I can try this in another video. What type of style do I want to have in my content? What do I want it to look like? Like, how can I create a structure in my life so that I'm consistently uploading on TikTok? Like, I actually just started making moves and I started, having a structure in my day and making my calendar and putting in the work, and I started feeling better. Even if I didn't see the immediate results, I knew that I was doing my best. I knew that I was putting my best foot forward and I was showing up and I was taking action and I was getting shit done. And in doing that, it has helped me break away from comparing and feeling like a victim to the platform and feeling like a victim to the algorithm or whatever it is. That can apply to a million other things, but if you're feeling like you're comparing and you're falling into this victim mode and you're feeling like a victim to your circumstances or to whatever it is that's going on in your life, get really real with yourself. Take ownership. Be responsible for yourself and how you show up, and choose different. Show up different. Take action. Put in the work. And in doing that, you're going to break out of this toxic loop. So I think I kind of touched on everything that I wanted to say. It's in one way understanding the reality of comparison, right? That there's upward comparisons and downward comparisons. Also understanding which types of comparing you tend to do more. As I was saying, for me, I tend to struggle the most with upward social comparisons when it comes to comparing with people around me or people who I'm friends with. And then realizing all that that can trigger, right? In some ways, it can trigger a lack mindset. In other ways, it can make you feel like a victim to your circumstances, or you can just feel really, really stuck. And so, how can you look at the experience of comparison with a better light and through a lens of growth? Well, use that experience to understand what you want. Why are you comparing to that person? What about their life or what about their experiences is inspiring to you? What makes you want that too? What steps can you take to actually get there? How are you being complacent? How are you playing small? What are things that you know you could do that you're not doing? And how can you tap into action so that you can know that you're putting your best foot forward? You can know that you're actually showing up. You can know that you're taking the action, and therefore you're going to feel proud of yourself. And if you stay consistent and you keep showing up, you're going to get to that end result and you're going to get to that success. And at the same time, realizing that you can't compare in isolation, that if you're catching yourself comparing, ask yourself, would I want that person's entire life? Would I want to give up everything that I have to have that one thing that that person has, as well as everything else that they have? That's going to make you realize that you have a lot in your life that you might be taking for granted and that you could be grateful for, that is really great, that is worth appreciating. And the last thing, too, that I didn't really mention that much is that when you're comparing your life to people's life on social media, just remember that you're seeing such a small sliver of their life, right? Like, I will just give an example to put this into perspective. I am out here living my life. I'm out here showing up, doing my job as a content creator, and I have a day with 24 hours. I post a few stories and I posted one reel today. My reel was 4 seconds long. You got to see 4 seconds of my entire day in that reel, right? Or even if I post a day in my life that is a minute long, that is 1 minute that is supposed to quote unquote convey 24 hours. And sometimes when you're recording, for example, a day in your life as a content creator and shit happens, you're not necessarily reaching out for your phone to record it. Like, some people are really good about this, but I remember I was recording a day in my life, like as I was landing in Hawaii. I was filming like what I ate that day, and it was kind of like a mini vlog. And I had moments where I was so hangry. I had moments where I was like laying in the hotel feeling really bloated and my stomach was hurting, and I didn't put that in the video. But, it tends to be a little bit of a highlight reel. And so don't compare yourself to people on social media, because people want to post about their wins and they want to post things that are helpful, educational, inspiring, motivating, or entertaining. And some people are really good at showing, the lows. I try to be as honest as I can. Like, I'll post on my story if I'm having a bad mental health day. Like, I think that's important. But even in showing that, like, you're not going to get the full scoop, the full tea of what's going on in my brain and why I'm struggling that day, etc., etc. So just remember that everyone is human, everyone is learning, and even the people who seem to be achieving all the things that you want to achieve, they're also learning, they're also growing, they're also imperfect, they also have things that they might be comparing themselves, and they also might be struggling with comparison. They might also be comparing themselves to someone else. And so just take everything with a grain of salt, and just also remember that comparison is a human experience, and these are some of the ways that you can start to navigate the experience of comparison with more lightness and with more compassion for yourself for getting into these mental spaces. So, if this episode helped you, please let me know. DM me or share it on your story, and let me know if a quote stood out to you or something that I said about comparison. And also, if you've talked to a friend recently about comparison, send this to them because it might help them as well. And if you guys are enjoying the podcast, just remember to hit the plus button on Apple Podcasts or the bell icon on Spotify, or if you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and the like button to support the show and to be in the loop of future episodes. I am super grateful for you guys. I love the podcast fam. I feel like you guys really see my true self and you really connect with me if you show up to listen to me talk for 30 minutes or an hour. And so I appreciate you guys more than you know. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I hope you take care of yourself, that you water yourself. And I love you guys. I'll see you next week. And I'm sending you a big hug. Bye.